He had no idea she would break his wrist with a single twist. No clue the quiet girl he and his friends mocked for weeks had spent her nights drilling combinations until her knuckles bled. No thought in his smirking head that the second he laid an uninvited hand on her, he'd be the one crying for help. But that was exactly what happened the day the bullies touched. Mia Carson's behind and discovered she was a deadly fighter. It started like any other Friday afternoon. The final bell rang at Ridgeview High, sending a current of relief through the halls. Mia closed her sketchbook, pressing her pencil into the spiral binding, and waited for the classroom to empty before slipping her hood up. She always walked alone. She liked it that way. It was easier to fade into the background when nobody expected her to smile or talk or pretend she didn't hear the whispers. They called her Mouse, because she was small, because she flinched when people shouted, because she didn't look anyone in the eye. It never occurred to them that the mouse they mocked had learned to hunt, that she'd been forged in the fire of necessity after her father died and her mother signed her up for Krav Maga so she'd never have to be afraid again. And Mia never was, not really. She just pretended to be scared because it kept the peace. Until that afternoon. She knew they were behind her the second she stepped into the breezeway. Three of them: Deacon with his shaggy hair and acne-scarred jaw, Reese with his stupid grin, and Leo, who always looked vaguely embarrassed to be there, but never left. They followed her out the door, their footsteps scraping gravel. Hey Mouse, Reese called, voice syrupy sweet. Hold up. Mia kept walking, but her chest tightened. She told herself she wouldn't let them see any reaction. They didn't deserve it. Deacon caught up first. He shoved her shoulder, hard enough to make her stumble. Her sketchbook fell to the ground, scattering graphite drawings across the breezeway like dead leaves. She crouched to gather them, wishing more than anything she could vanish into thin air. You dropped something, Deacon sneered. His boot pinned one of her sketches. Oops. She lifted her gaze to meet his, willing her expression to stay blank. She was so tired of being cornered, tired of the humiliation, tired of pretending she didn't feel rage smoldering under her skin. But she still didn't move. She waited for them to lose interest, the way they usually did. That was when Reese reached around and slapped her backside. The sound cracked across the breezeway, followed by his bark of laughter. Damn, Mouse didn't know you had an ass under that baggy hoodie. Time stopped. Mia stood frozen, her sketchbook dangling from numb fingers. Deacon cackled. Leo looked away, and in that suspended instant, something inside her uncoiled a serpent that had been waiting, patient and cold-blooded for exactly this moment. She set her sketchbook on the concrete. Slowly, deliberately, she straightened, turned, to face them. Deacon's grin flickered. Yo, he said, shifting uneasily. Don't get all dramatic. Reese was just She stepped in, pivoting on the ball of her foot, and struck Reese's throat with the edge of her palm. He made a strangled sound and dropped to his knees. Before Deacon could react, she seized his wrist, twisted it out and down with all her body weight. The joint gave a sickening crack. He shrieked high and desperate and went sprawling on the ground. Leo backed away. Hands up. Whoa, Mia, chill. We were kidding. She didn't hear him. She was breathing fast, her vision tunneled. Every lesson, every drill, every late-night hour in the gym crashed through her in a surge of clarity. Reese was wheezing. Deacon was rocking on his side, clutching his ruined wrist. Leo looked like he might throw up. She met his eyes. Her voice, eerily calm, picked them up and go. Leo hesitated a moment longer, then scrambled to hold his friends upright. They hobbled away, cursing and whimpering, until the breezeway was silent again. Mia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking. She retrieved her sketchbook and carefully stacked her drawings, feeling like she'd just crossed some invisible threshold. She could never return from and the strangest part, she didn't feel guilty. She felt clean, weightless. For the first time in years, she felt like herself. Word of what she'd done spread through the school by Monday morning. Some stories claimed she'd broken Reese's windpipe. Others said she'd dislocated Deacon's shoulder instead of his wrist. Nobody seemed to know exactly how it happened, but everyone knew she wasn't to be trifled with. The whispers still followed her, but they had a new tone, wariness, even respect. Some people smiled at her in the hallways. A few kids she'd never spoken to slipped her notes thanking her for standing up to them. One girl, Kelsey from her art class, found her at lunch and said in a trembling voice, "I wish I'd been brave enough to fight back when they picked on me." Mia didn't know how to reply. She wasn't sure she'd call what she'd done brave. It felt more like inevitability, like a fuse that had to burn down eventually. Still, when Kelsey walked away, Mia felt something bloom quietly in her chest. Connection, but not everyone was impressed. That afternoon, Principal Harris called her to the office. She sat across the desk, studying the neat rows of family photos on the wall behind him. He rubbed his temples as he spoke. Mia, I understand you felt threatened, he began. But, you can't just they touched me, she interrupted, her voice low, and they've been harassing me for months. Asterisk, his mouth pressed into a tight line. I know, and they're facing consequences. Suspension, mandatory counseling, but your response was extreme. Asterisk, Mia looked him in the eye. If I hadn't defended myself, would you be telling me this? Silence. She stood. Then we're done here. Asterisk, as she left the office, she saw Deacon sitting outside, his arm in a splint. He turned his face away when he noticed her. She didn't feel triumphant, just tired. But under the exhaustion was a sense of rightness she couldn't deny. Weeks that followed were different. She was still the quiet girl. She still kept her hood up and drew when the world felt too loud. But she wasn't invisible anymore, and she wasn't prey. Asterisk, after what happened, her mother tried to talk to her about it. They sat on the couch, mugs of cocoa cooling between them. Mia picked at the hem of her sleeve, waiting for the inevitable disappointment. Asterisk, instead, her mother just sighed. Your father would have been proud of you. Asterisk, Mia's head jerked up. What? Asterisk, you protected yourself, her mom said softly. I used to worry you'd spend your life letting people walk over you, but you didn't. Asterisk, for a long moment, Mia couldn't speak. Tears stung her eyes, and she blinked them back. Asterisk, does that mean you're not mad? She whispered. Asterisk, her mother shook her head. I'm furious. At them, not at you. Asterisk, Mia set her mug down and leaned into her mother's side. For the first time since the funeral, she let herself cry. Asterisk, it was like a dam breaking. Afterward, she felt raw, but lighter. By spring, the bullies had mostly left her alone. Reese avoided her completely. Deacon still glared sometimes, but he never said a word. Leo transferred schools, though nobody told her why. Asterisk, one afternoon, Kelsey caught up to her again as she was leaving art club. Asterisk, hey, Kelsey said, a little breathless, I was wondering, would you teach me some of that stuff, the self-defense? Asterisk, Mia hesitated. She'd never taught anyone before, but she remembered how it felt to stand in that breezeway, how powerless she'd been, right up until she wasn't, and she thought maybe she could help someone else find that moment of freedom. Asterisk, so, she nodded. Sure. Asterisk, every Thursday after school, they practiced in the gym. Word spread, and soon other girls started joining. 6, then 10, then almost 20. Mia's coach lent them mats, and Mia wrote drills on a whiteboard in tidy letters. She didn't think of herself as a leader, but somehow, that's what she'd become. Asterisk, one day, while the others were stretching, Kelsey pulled her aside. Asterisk, you know, she said shyly, you changed everything, not just for you, for all of us. Asterisk, Mia felt her throat tighten. She looked around the gym at the girls practicing palm strikes, at the laughter and the sense of solidarity, and realized it was true. She had thought her fight was just survival. But it was more than that. It was permission for others to fight, too. That summer, she hung her old hoodie in the back of her closet. She didn't need it anymore. When she passed familiar faces in the halls or downtown, she lifted her chin and looked them straight in the eye. Asterisk, people still called her mouse sometimes, but it didn't bother her. Mice survived, mice adapted, and sometimes, when cornered, they bit back. Asterisk, she'd learned something vital in that breezeway, something she would carry all her life, that no one had the right to touch her without her consent, that no one could diminish her worth, that the quiet girl people underestimated might be the most dangerous person in the room, not because she was cruel, but because she knew exactly who she was. Asterisk, and she would never apologize for it again. Asterisk, Mia never saw herself as a hero, but when she looked back, she realized that standing up for herself wasn't the end of her story, it was the beginning. A beginning that taught her the power of a single act of defiance, the strength in choosing to fight, and the quiet revolution that starts the moment you decide you are enough, exactly as you are.